Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and we're getting an update today from Stillwater Critical Minerals, traded on the TSX.V under the ticker PGE, and on the OTCQB under the ticker PGEZF. And we're joined today with the president and CEO of Stillwater Critical Minerals, Mike Rowley. And Mike, it's always great getting you on the show to get an update on Stillwater. The news that you had come out recently is really a different kind of a news release for us to cover today, and that is that on August the 15th, you press released that you've teamed up in a collaboration with the University of California, Berkeley, the National Lab, and the University of Texas, and in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Energy to look at geological hydrogen production at Stillwater West. And I guess some of this stems from the fact that you have a unique rock type with these iron-rich minerals, but also these ultramafic rocks, and it allows for the potential of hydrogen production out of this area. It's a very interesting study, and it kind of puts you in a different light, I think, with a lot of people in the critical mineral space. So why don't you speak to what this actually means, what the deal is about, how does this work, and how does it apply to Stillwater Critical Minerals shareholders?
Oh, yeah, sure. Glad to be back. And exciting news. The U.S. government is putting significant research and resources into the geologic hydrogen effort. They released $20 million late last year, and I'm pleased to say this was the biggest grant from that tranche, $2 million. And it's exactly what you describe. It's early stage D.O.E. funding to look at geologic hydrogen from the Stillwater complex. So this is, as we go to look at a mining operation over the coming years at Stillwater, what is the potential to add a green hydrogen product to that production scenario? Geologic hydrogen can be produced with the lowest carbon footprint of essentially all methods of producing hydrogen. It's very compelling. It's probably being produced naturally all the time. Actually, it's just not usually collected. That gets a bit more into oil and gas type formations, but you need some sort of a cap to catch it, right? In this event, we're talking about stimulating it in the correct rock types and then looking to collect it at wellheads, as they describe. It's exciting stuff. And early stage, important to note, it does not take precedent over the critical minerals potential here, which is what both the DoD, DOE, and Glencore want us to focus on, especially nickel, also copper, cobalt. But it does show us getting farther out in government. And this is our, I believe, third DOE grant now in place on the project, and the company. So it shows us getting out farther afield in government as well.
Well, could you expand on that a little bit, Mike? Because I know we've talked in the past about a relationship you have with Cornell University, and I know that when we were in Washington, D.C. at the Energy Transition Summit, that there was a lot of government presence there, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and you were also meeting with some of the politicians at a state level from Montana. So maybe just speak to how you have become more of a common name in government circles.
Yeah, it's the snowball effect, frankly. It's built really nicely. It was a slow beginning 2 years ago or more. And then that DOE grant that you mentioned with Cornell, February of 2023, did a lot for us. That was for carbon sequestration, and that's still real. In fact, I think it's very real at Stillwater, and you can potentially benefit the balance sheet under the tax credits of 45Q, right? Especially with those oil refineries nearby in Billings, Montana. Bigger picture, we've done very well getting out more in the state and in D.C. I've now met with both senators from the state of Montana and both congressmen, and I've also met multiple times with the governor, chambers of commerce on all levels, even the local community associations. And this is all part of us building out our government effort and moving from DOE funding, such as the grants you've seen, to the bigger DOD funding, which we are working towards.
Well, Mike, you shared with me a flow chart for some of these government funding mechanisms and all the different departments that tie in. And it's really an eyesore to look at it. There's so many different things. So maybe just speak to, is there anybody else on your team that's helping you navigate all these processes? Because I think the general takeaway from that conference we were at was even the government is confused as how this flow sheet works.
Yeah, it's it's full of acronyms too. For those that haven't seen it, it's the Cassidy and Associates slide. I've been using it a bit lately, and actually Mark Compton of the American Mining Association used it in Butte recently. It's just a mess, and it shows where critical minerals funding goes in the government. We are now in 3 or even 4 places on that chart. And it is tricky to navigate. You basically need to be in DC a lot and then out on the ground locally in the community. Thankfully, we're in a pro-mining community. Sibanye is very well liked, and their good neighbor agreement is a good precedent for the industry. I've had literally no negative feedback to date on what we're talking about doing. And Bozeman recently gained federal funding to become a tech hub, the Headwaters Tech Hub. That's furthered the understanding in the state for the need of critical materials, critical engineering, chips. In the case of Bozeman, it's photonics and AI, but it all ties into the same body. So yeah, it is a whole maze and of acronyms, but you pay lawyers in Washington, D.C., and it's amazing what happens.
Well, I'm sure that the lawyers appreciate that. But yes, it seems like it's working. And to your point, it is a snowball effect. Let's also talk to folks listening in that, there's all these push about ESG initiatives in the mining sector, not just mining and oil and gas and really any extractive industry. A lot of people give it lip service, Mike. They're not really doing ESG initiatives. But in this case, you have legitimate funding going to universities to partner with you for both CO2 sequestration, as you mentioned with Cornell, and now this geological hydrogen that could be another green power source here as you start the development of the project. Maybe just speak to how this could put you on the radar of funds that are targeting ESG initiatives.
It really does. And it's more than just the mining industry providing the critical minerals necessary and trying to make a case for its essential place in that. It's also us sequestering carbon, actively pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it in the rocks. And in the case of hydrogen, producing green energy that you can do anything with. Hydrogen, as you know, doesn't transport very well, very far, doesn't compress easily. So to produce it locally and consume it locally starts to get pretty compelling. And if you can do that while mining, that's even more attractive. Perhaps you're powering parts of Montana or certain industries in Montana, maybe even the mine itself, from the hydrogen you're making without carbon. That gets pretty compelling. So yes, it registers on a bigger audience, and news releases like that punch above their weight. The typical mining crowd is kind of tapped out right now, as you know. It's been years of bear market and sideways or down action across the whole sector. Anything you can do to reach a bigger audience and a broader audience and add these new initiatives to the appeal certainly help. More eyes on the story.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's a broader audience you can attract and maybe even some new eyeballs that come in through a different doorway into this sector, realizing that there needs to be more partnership between government, higher education, the mining sector, local stakeholders, social license, but all of that tying into how do we do this in a more green way. I guess just as we wrap up, let's just give people a teaser of what else are you working on at the Stillwater Critical Minerals project as far as moving things forward on the minerals that you have to extract out of the ground one day, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. I was actually going to bring it back to that. These are nice add-ons, but they're early stage work. The core here, pun intended, is the critical minerals. And Stillwater is unusually well positioned with one of the largest layered magmatic systems in the world. It's already got a terrific endowment of 1.6 billion pounds battery metals, 3.8 million ounces precious metals and gold. And we've got Sibanye producing less than 2 kilometers from us. The infrastructure is there. The pro-mining drive is there. And we've got Glencore as a 15% shareholder. They like what they're seeing. They have the same vision that we and also the U.S. government have for primary critical mineral supply within the U.S. and possibly even secondary processing within the state of Montana, right? Hydromet plant to make an EV feed for all the battery factories that are being built in the southern U.S. It's starting to add up really nicely, and that is the grand vision here. General markets don't get it, but they aren't getting anything right now, and our whole sector is grossly undervalued, including Stillwater. With the recent move in gold price, and promise this is my last thought for the day, we're seeing the TSX Venture Index move up nicely. Gold producers are making profits, and that is finally registering. And we're seeing the beginning of the capital rotation back to commodities. And that refers to those slides from Incrementum and others that we've been touting for some time.
All right. Well, there's a lot to look forward to as far as the future with Stillwater Critical Minerals, not just the work that you're doing on the ground, but a lot of this work that you're doing with government funding, with the higher education, looking at ways to actually do legitimate critical minerals, green ESG friendly initiatives. And so it was kind of a fun one to do this interview, Mike. Keep us posted as you got more news out. We'll get you back on for an update. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Chad. Look forward to updates. Cheers.